Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys. Today, we're going to be diving a little bit into the world of decon solution with a guest speaker. As we have been kind of talking about over the course of the past year, the biggest change to Hazmat is going to be our decon, right? We've talked about different decon techniques. We've talked about different ways in which we can go about thinking about decon. And one of probably the most confusing things that is kind of been brought out there and is swirling around are all the different types of solutions that can be used and when to use them and how to use them. So we got a guest on today to kind of give us a heads up.
Yeah, so I'd like to welcome Chris Hodge. Welcome.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what's the deal?
So I'm Chris Hodge. I am a developer. I've spent years doing research in the area of chemical and biological decontamination. I have been around nationally, internationally for 15 to 20 years in the community, and probably currently I'm best known for being the inventor of Dahlgren Decon.
Oh my!
Ooh. So it's not like we got somebody who knows about it. We got somebody who literally created it.
Yeah. So we really don't look around for people at all.
No.
when we get these interviews. So, we travel, and I'm sure Chris and everybody out there knows, we travel all around a lot, discussing things with the network, the nation, and everything like that. And in a recent event, you made the remark that we no longer need to discuss on how to decontaminate, right? So that was kind of a bold statement, and a lot of people kind of rock back on their heels, but we need to have a conversation about how to decontaminate more efficiently, I think. That's where the whole trend is going. So what is the conversation that we should be having about decontamination as a process?
Right. So yeah, thanks. The part of how this has shaped itself in my mind over the last decade is tied to a lot of history and a lot of chemistry. So the community has been working on this for a long time. A lot of experts from the national labs, from the Army, from the Air Force, from the Navy, from our partners overseas in the UK with DSTL and Australia, Germany. Lots of folks have been looking at this and doing really good work on it for a long time. We really understand the chemistry.
Right.
So it's well established. It's published. We know physical removal. We know oxidation. We know hydrolysis. We know all the fancy chemistry words, right? So we understand the chem agents, the bioagents, the TICs, the TIMs. We know how to deal with the particles, the rad particles, etc. We understand the difference between neutralization and removal. Mm-hmm. But really where I'm trying to focus these days is getting the word out about how the state of the art has changed and what that means in terms of optimization of processes.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Like, explain that. Like, you're saying that the method that we were doing, like washing a guy like a car, is not really applicable. I mean, because I will say from my point of view, from where me and my work, we have done a entire process changeover, and it involves more of a dry decon, a total shift in paradigms.
Right.
So is that where you're looking to go? Like, that's the efficiency?
That's part of it. And that's a good example. I try to come up with examples to make it more tangible, right? So think how we did laundry 15 years ago, right? You had a washing machine and used a lot of water and a lot of soap, and it agitated. Use hot water if you wanted certain things. Use cold water if you wanted certain things. Over the past decade or so, though, we've seen the emergence of the high efficiency washer and the concentrated soaps. So we use less water, and we can often use less hot water and less soap, but we still get the same result. So that's the kind of stuff I want to try to open people's eyes to. We can do stuff different, and it may require that we have some different processes or different ingredients or different equipment, but we can certainly do things differently and better.
So as long as we're considering how we can do things differently and better, one of the biggest things that we come across when we start talking about changing over from one form of decon to another has to be with the cost. That seems to be one of like the biggest factors. People are like, yeah, but I've got all this stuff set up. What is it going to cost me to switch over? And traditionally, we've always looked at cost of the decon solution as almost like a per gallon type of, like, I'm going to buy 6 gallons of decon. Are there other costs that the community should be thinking about as they're looking to start to transition to these newer scientific concepts and ideas and thoughts?
I really believe that's a key point. I come from an era and training as kind of a total quality from total quality management paradigm where you wanted to look at the cost of quality, the life cycle cost, those kind of things, where it wasn't just how much does widget X cost, but what does it cost to store it, and what other widgets do you have to make it work. So unit cost is always a factor, but there are things like, what are your hardware requirements? What are your personnel requirements? Going back to some of the chemistry pieces. And big words, right? Stoichiometry is a factor. How much chemistry am I getting per unit of volume that I can procure? Right. If it's more concentrated, then I drive my wife crazy doing the calculations in the grocery store and reading the labels, right?
You do that too, huh?
Oh my gosh! But it's years ago, you'd go into the store and you'd have a 12-ounce can for 50 cents and a 14-ounce can for 70 cents, and pulling out your calculator in the grocery store to save a penny kind of looks a little silly a lot of days, especially when your wife's there telling you that she doesn't have time for you to do that because the kids are going crazy. But they started putting the cost per ounce out there so that you could see, if I'm buying a can of beans and they're different sizes and different costs, I have something I can compare quickly and make a value decision. So that the amount of chemistry you have in a volume of decontaminant, probably the best measure of it, and this is a place where I focused on, is how much surface area coverage will that allow you to achieve efficiently, instead of just, how much does it cost per gallon?
Yeah, that's what I was actually just going to ask. What do you mean exactly by, the amount of chemistry that you get? Because I guess the real basic thing that we're switching over from the old way to the new way is that we almost used soap as just a means to get it off of us. And right. This new solution, especially the Dahlgren, it literally uses chemistry to destroy the product, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we fundamentally change it so that it behaves differently in a way that is more acceptable to us. Yeah.
So that's what you mean by you get more chemistry, like you actually get the ability to destroy more stuff.
Absolutely. And again, in that analogy around the place I try to go with that is, if most people understand the concept of proofing in alcohol, right? So a glass of whiskey or a glass of beer have different amounts of alcohol for the same volume.
Right.
So, 40 proof is different than 5 proof. Right. And that is a measure of the chemistry, the effective chemistry in those two products.
Interesting. So, I mean, do you find, and I'm just talking about the chemistry of it, do you find that you need more water? Or do you think you can still or do you need less of the, I'm trying to think of how to pose this one, because if I have a concentrated product, then either I have to dilute it down in order to get the same effect, or I can utilize a higher concentration. Do you find you need to keep the concentration up high? Like, do you?
It's interesting. All of this comes in. All of this factors into those pieces I was starting to lay out there, because one of the other costs that becomes significant later on is your cost of if you have overspray, you have effluent, you have waste.
Yes.
And you have to deal with containment, and containment comes with other costs like equipment and then disposal. So, maybe you want to have a certain amount to manage how easy it is to dispense, but maybe you don't. What if you could just mist a surface and get the same effect as you would if you put a deluge on the surface? Those are the kind of process changes I'm trying to open people's eyes to.
I never really thought about it. Like, if you have an inefficient sprayer and you're wasting concentrate, you're wasting a lot more than if you had the solution. That's a really interesting concept. I have to think about that a little more.
Think about this piece. If I'm spraying with pressure,
right,
it doesn't just hit the surface and stay. It splatters. And now I've got to deal with my gear being contaminated, and how do I deal with that?
So what's the solution to that? How do you work out the most efficient means to apply this?
Application.
So a big piece of it is knowing what products are out there and what products are capable of, because every decontamination problem is not the same, and every decontamination solution is not the same. And so you do have to look at what your requirements are, what your desired outcome is, what your scenario is, and pair a technology with it that allows you to succeed in your decontamination mission while minimizing all these other factors, right? How can I minimize the logistics? How can I minimize my storage? How can I minimize my hardware? How can I get decon on target faster? Because if I'm not getting it on target fast, I'm already losing the battle because it's soaking into the surfaces. So you have to look at the technologies, right? You have to look at what they're capable of based on the testing that's been done for them. You have to look at how fast they work. You have to look at whether or not it requires high pressure application.
Right.
If there's any additional manipulation that has to be done on the solution as it's applied. Right. Because if you have to add energy, if you have to heat it, if you have to foam it, if you have to spray it, all of those have different scenarios that they may be best tuned for. And you have to decide, is that your scenario?
Well, then that brings around another interesting question about the value of a solution or a method based upon the surface it covers, right? So if I have something that's highly concentrated, it's only going to cover X. And, if people would think, well, if I dilute it, I have X times 10 or 15. But what I'm asking is what's the value of a decontamination solution based upon the surface area it covers? Is it more beneficial at concentrated or less, or what's your thoughts on that?
It gets complicated. It does. Sometimes, so part of that is driven by what you know about your contaminant. If you have an unknown, you have to treat it like the worst case, right? And in our community, the worst case scenario is almost always a thick agent that isn't volatile, that requires a lot of chemistry. That's the gold standard's VX, right? That is, it is persistent. It requires a lot more chemistry than any of the other agents. And if if I'm in a military kind of scenario and I've got something that looks like a duck and smells like a duck, right? And it's VX.
I'm not smelling that duck.
It is. You have to treat it like that's what it is, right? And that means a lot of chemistry. That means a lot of product. However, you mentioned dry decon. Maybe you've got the ability to absorb with a absorbent powder or some kind of wipe, bulk decon or bulk contamination, and then you now have it in a controlled material. It's a lot easier to control than a liquid, right? It doesn't run off, and it's easier to dispose later. But then you've also reduced your surface contamination to a much more manageable level, and you could apply less decontaminant. But the cost comparison gets tricky there, right? Because most of the development and planning revolves around the worst case scenario, that VX high concentration issue. But the reality is that we're very unlikely to ever run into that scenario in a way, or in our routine daily lives, or even in a lot of military scenarios. we're usually dealing with lots less potent things. So that changes the game. If we know we're dealing with something that doesn't require that level of chemistry, it really makes a difference in what you can bring to bear and how you bring it to bear. So a couple of comparisons. We were talking about the unit cost and the coverage and all that kind of stuff. So if you had a $25 per gallon decontaminant and it covered 75 square feet effectively, or you had a $100 per gallon decontaminant that covered 75 square feet effectively, that's a pretty easy decision, right? I'm going to go with the cheaper version, and it's going to get the job done. At the same time, if I have a $100 per gallon decontaminant that covers 75 square feet, or a $100 per gallon decontaminant that covered 2,500 square feet, again, I'm no math whiz, but I put things in units of 10 for a purpose. It makes it easy while I'm talking. Again, the comparison simple. The one with, if they're the same cost, the one with the greater coverage is the best value. Where it starts getting complicated is what about what if I had a $25 per gallon decontaminant that covered 75 square feet, or $100 per gallon decontaminant that covered 2,500 square feet? I need a new term. I have to have another number to do a good comparison, and that's the term that I'm trying to introduce into the conversation, which is cost per coverage or cost per square feet. Right? Effectiveness is required. Right? It has to be effective. But in that example, the first one, the cheaper decon by most standards, the $25 per gallon, going back to that grocery analysis, right, is 33 cents a square foot. Right.
Right.
The $100 per gallon one that covered 2,500 square feet is only 4 cents per square foot. So that's a better value. Right. If they're equally effective, that's a better value. And I'm also changing the conversation a little bit, because now I'm applying a lot less to the surface, which means all the things down the end of this process in terms of logistics and management just got reduced significantly.
So how do you think, if you were a fire department or you were holding a hazmat team and you were starting to switch over to this idea of, volume versus surface and solutions versus just diluting it, how would you start to go about writing a better requirement so that the procedures can state the requirements based upon the effective coverage instead of just volume? Like, how does that process start?
This is a challenge we have seen plague our community, not just our community, but the procurement system as a whole, because we think we know what we want when we go into the procurement, and we say things that are actually limiting what people can bring into the game. So as all you see in all the procurement acquisition literature, for guidance for the acquirers, right? Acquirers, don't tell people how to do what you want. Tell them what you want. So I would suggest give the desired outcome. What is it that you really want at the end of the process? If all you want is your equipment and personnel restored to their normal operations, then that's really what you want. If that requires you to physically remove or chemically neutralize, we can manage that in how we propose against an acquisition package. But there are other factors too, like how fast do you need to be able to deploy your decon, and how fast do you need to be able to prep your decon, and how fast do you need your chemistry to work if you're neutralizing, or how fast do you need it removed if you're just spraying. There's so many different factors that can come in that you can use as knobs to tune what you want, but you got to say what you want very simply and clearly.
So there's no one fit?
No, I think many scenarios there's not just one fit. It really depends on what you need at the end of the process, and then you can tune the process.
Wow.
So you really got to know your area. You got to know what you're dealing with. You got to know what your potential risks are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it's kind. You know what? And I'm picking up a trend here. Is that and this is something we rarely do. Is we're talking more to the people that are in the procurement, like the district managers and the guys that are in purchasing, because that does come into effect. I mean, we can say all we want. We're the guys downrange. You just give us what we need. But at the end of the day, if you don't have it in your hands, you don't have it to use.
Yeah.
Like I would love to
ain't
have
got
the
it.
best.
Sorry, boss.
Yeah, like oh, they didn't buy enough, or they didn't buy it, and so that could be an issue for us. So I would like to just unpack something you said a little bit before, and it was the cost of the decon solution, the overspray, and the waste that's generated with the decon process. What do you mean by that? And second, how do we? Are the decon solutions that are available today, are they able to be just thrown down the sewer? I mean, are they getting in that direction? Where are we going with that?
So a lot of that is a question of what was the original design. Was biodegradability designed into a product? Was environmental compatibility designed into the product? The logistics of decontamination, I said something about that earlier. You guys are pulling that thread now because how it's designed impacts the logistics of the processes that are possible. So if the logistics that I desire are lower inventories, then I need concentrated formulations that can be reconstituted in the field. If minimal overspray is an important factor to me, then I only want to constitute to the base level that allows it to be effective and not dilute any further. And then once I have it deployed in the field, I'm concerned if I've designed it for biodegradability and environmental impact, because in everything we do, there's tons of evidences that we need to be better stewards of our environment. So if in this scenario we're dealing with things that are not good for the environment or us, we don't want to make it worse by how we fix it. So if you design into your formulations things that are inherently lower impact to the environment and degradable to innocuous things, at the end of the day, it'd be great if you just had something equivalent to salad dressing, right? Because we know how to deal with that, right? Don't put it on your salad. But you see that in a lot of the more modern decons. They have components that themselves are degradable. Again, I can speak most effectively for the Dahlgren formulation because of my history with it. It has soaps that are commonly found in household products, shampoos, things like that. It has oxidizers that break down, roughly into vinegar and medical grade hydrogen peroxide, which eventually breaks down into water and oxygen. So all things that are common in our, not just our environment, but our households, things that we're used to, right?
Yeah.
It was fundamentally tailored out of the chemistry of the laundering industry. So it looks a lot like laundry chemistry. So it's not something that we should be worried about having a deleterious effect on our sewer systems or our, the bugs in the ponds at the water purification facilities. Right. Those are all things that were taken into consideration for that particular product development, and it's something that today, now that it's being used outside of the original design, which was for military applications, it turns out to be a very good thing if it's going to be used in the environment by first responders and people that are there to help in a scenario instead of trying to, harm the facility or the equipment or the people or the whatever it winds up being put on.
That's handy.
Without a doubt. So, I mean, you're looking at like, all in all, you're looking at lower costs, lower environmental impact, less equipment, easier to actually perform, right? I mean, those four things in and of themselves seem like, I don't know, it seems like a win-win situation.
We try to design it for simplicity, and in a lot of ways we were successful. Sometimes we were just plain out lucky, but hey, we'll take it. So the other piece of this, and because there's some costs you can control, and then there's some costs that you can't control. Like if you damage the environment, what's the cost of cleanup of a site, man? You don't know until you're into it. You don't want to get in that scenario. You don't want to be dealing with pollution. You don't want to pollute something and then have to deal with cleanup. That's a massive undertaking. But then there's other factors that come into the mix as well, like litigation. If I damage somebody's property, the legal cost itself associated with that, even outside of the cleanup, could be astronomical. So really trying to manage that piece, which is hard to measure, is another factor that you have to think about as well.
So, Chris, for our audience, if you could just sum up some of the key concepts that they need to really kind of understand what is being talked about today, like what do you want them to walk away with in their head?
So there are a few drums that I beat regularly. One is the one that we've been talking about today, which is cost per what is important, right? Cost per coverage is what I'm suggesting is the biggest factor we should be considering, rather than unit cost. But there's other pieces that I'm trying to introduce as well, like speed, right? It's a race against time when you're dealing with contamination. The longer it's on a surface or in the environment, the deeper it's penetrating into things that are hard to clean up.
Okay.
So the faster you can the more you can distribute, the further down into the system you can distribute the capability to decon, and the faster you can deploy it, the better. So having everything up in storage that has to be brought out by a specialized unit takes time. Having at least the first steps of decontamination in the hands of the people that are in the hot zone is the most important thing. You've got to be able to get decon started immediately.
Interesting.
One of the other big deals is talk to people that have used it, right? Because I can sit in the lab all day and say this works and this is simple. But until it's in the user's hands and until you've got real live scenario-driven hot zone data, until you've got people that are using it in the field giving you feedback, you really don't know whether or not it's that good or that easy.
Right. That's important stuff. I would like the stuff I use to work. That helps.
Usually. Yeah, and I could definitely see what you're saying, because I think a lot of the people, they look at it like, oh, it's like you're trying to convince me of this like magic solution, like I spray it on and I'm done.
Right.
And I think it's gonna take a lot to get people, because conceptually we have such an idea that when we're going through that car wash that the product is being off of us and is over there. But then it's like, well, it's still here, but it's different.
Right. And I will say that, the culture, the hazmat culture that we live in is traditionalist. And on our wall in our firehouse, it says, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. But the thing is that honestly, me and Mike, I can speak at least for myself. I am a big fan of where we're going with decontamination. It is conceptually is where I thought we should be going a long time ago, and thank the Lord that we're starting to go that way. So
well, as the equipment's getting better, I mean the suits, the things that are possible in terms of protecting, especially think firefighters, right? How deep they can get into something that is hot and stifling is totally different now than it was years ago. The way that we manage disease and the closeness we can get to infected people without ourselves getting infected has totally changed. Right. This is another area that has progressed, and we want to get the word out that it has.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit more information about where they can find you, or more information about this stuff?
Sure thing. So I am Chris Hodge, and one of the inventors of Dahlgren Decon in particular, but work with a cadre of individuals for over a decade throughout the Army, Navy, Air Force, national labs, international community, and we are a pretty close-knit community. But I can be most easily reached out to through the company that now has commercialized Dahlgren Decon and who I support, First Line Technology. And their phone number is 703-955-7510, and their website is firstlinetech.com.
Awesome.
Great company, good
so
guys.
Much.
I always enjoy talking with the guys at First Line.
They're always there for an answer. So thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Hey, Bobby, Mike, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at the Hazmat Guys. And take a moment to call our comment hotline at 843-628-1484 and go to www.thehazmatguys.com and sign up for the newsletter.
We seriously look forward to your feedback about any of the information provided, and we also want to hear about interesting incidents that you were a part of. So you can send us a note at feedback@thehazmatguys.com. And remember, any of the information that you share with us, if we put it on air, can always remain anonymous.
Remember, guys, don't just get on the job. Get into the job.